Did you see this week the new Mac Mini, the even smaller Mac Mini? And no, it wasn't from Apple. It came from YouTuber Quinn Nelson of Snazzy Labs. He has a great YouTube channel. If you haven't caught it before, you should really check it out. And he did an amazing M1 Mac Mini hack. I'll have a link to it in the show notes at maccast.com. But as you know, the Apple standard M1 machines, not the Pro or Max systems, but all of the M1 machines use the same processor. So whether it's the 13-inch MacBook Pro or the Mac Mini or the MacBook Air, they all have the same processor. But obviously, the Mac Mini probably has the biggest form factor in terms of space. And what's super odd is that despite that processor, the M1 Apple Silicon, having so much more energy efficiency and giving off way less heat, Apple chose to use the same old Mac Mini case that it always has. And as Nelson points out, it still has the massive 150 watt power supply left over from the Intel era Mac Mini, and it really doesn't need all of that. It's not really clear why Apple chose to keep the form factor exactly the same and not really redesign it. Maybe it was to just save money. Maybe it is because they're planning a redesign in the future. Maybe they didn't want to redesign it because it could upset some of their biggest customers for the Mac Mini, like education and the enterprise. They depend on that form factor, say, for like rack mounting Mac Minis in a server farm. So that could have really screwed things up. Nelson points out all of this stuff, but then proves that the Mac Mini could be smaller by proceeding to basically hack it apart, throw in a new power supply, and he really just takes the existing internals. He's not doing anything over the top. Puts it in a custom 3D printed case inspired by a Mac Pro, and ends up with a Mac Mini that is 78% smaller than Apple's version, which is just incredible. They make kind of a big deal about the case, and they do a nice job at 3D printing it. Personally, I didn't think it was that awesome or snazzy, I guess pun intended. But it's fine for a 3D printed case. But overall, just the project itself is incredibly impressive, right? It would be even more impressive if Apple actually redesigned the Mini, because they could actually make it potentially even smaller than what Nelson did. Because if you redesign the board and move things around, you could definitely get it even smaller, and it could be really, really incredible. So I wanted to bring this up because if you haven't seen it, you should go check it out. It's a really cool thing. And again, these are members of our community, YouTubers and folks that are doing really, really cool stuff. So I'd like to recognize them and kind of show off their work if you haven't had a chance to see it. But the other thing is just to bring up the conversation of, do you think the Mac Mini is kind of overdue for a redesign? Because I kind of feel like it really is, and especially in the era of Apple Silicon, it feels like Apple could do a lot more with the form factor of the Mini. They really could potentially minify the Mini, and is that potentially a good thing or not? I don't really know. I don't see any reason why not to make it smaller, especially if you can keep all of the ports in there. If they start taking ports away, though, as Apple often does when they miniaturize things, that might be a little bit disappointing. So I wouldn't want to see them do that, but definitely if they could cut down the case size. I mean, there's a lot of extra room in there. There's a big giant fan in there that they don't need anymore. So what do you think? What do you think Apple should do with the Mac Mini and the form factor? Do you think that's something we'll see Apple redesign this year? I would imagine we could see a redesign this year. It feels like 2022 would be a great year to do that, especially if they throw in a new M2 processor. I'd love to see it. So what do you think? Let me know, maccast@gmail.com.